It's finally time to step inside the brand new tank that has come into World of Tanks console, and it is of course the ISU 152K. This is of course the kind of unnerfed version of the ISU 152 with the BL10, so this has the super high penetration rounds, 289mm on its standard rounds with 329 I believe on its premium rounds, so you basically don't bounce with this thing even if you're coming up against tier 10 heavy tanks and you're looking at some of the most heavily armoured parts of them. But today's video is going to showcase how much damage this tank can really rack up and why I have found this to be one of my most favourite tanks, at least currently within the games, to just play and have a bit of fun with and just mess around with within the game, because ultimately the whole game is about having fun. It may not be the most competitive tank at tier 8 within the game, but not all of the time do you want to be playing something that is just like super overpowered in all regards, like mobility, turret, you know, having the DPM. Like, you can't have everything all of the time because otherwise it just kind of gets boring and you're playing the same tank over and over again. But the ISU 152K, although it may sound like from that description it's not super overpowered, it is very, 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 very good in a lot of situations, and so that is why I think that this tank could be one of the few tanks that I would actually recommend you guys actually try. I'm not going to promote you going out and buying it, I'm just saying, like, what you should do is, if you have been like thinking about getting yourself a tank that maybe you've kind of been waiting around for a tank that's actually decent to come out, this one is actually decent. Albeit, you know, if you're interested in tank destroyers, don't go out and buy one of these if you're interested in light tanks, because it's obviously not a light tank. But yeah, you can do things like this where you're just slapping rounds into opponent tanks. And of course we low rolled in that one, which is a little bit disappointing, only dealing 640. The alpha damage on the ISU 152K actually is 750, and that means that if you're coming up against pretty much anyone lower tier than you, you can almost one-shot them from full health. And if you're coming up against tier 6s, which you can with this thing, yeah, you can one-shot them very easily indeed. Obviously, we haven't managed to pick up too much damage within this game. We've landed 2 hits, but we've only done less than 1,000 damage up until the point where we just take out the 40 TP, and this is where it feels very, very bad for the enemy team, because yeah, they don't really have much chance when you're just putting nice 750 alpha damage shots into them like you're seeing here, picking up 2,500 damage. It's so hard. Yeah, definitely not. But the ISU 152K is all about using that super high alpha damage, and that's where I think that this tank comes in really, really well. If you've played any of the Russian tank destroyers, at least non-turreted tank destroyers, or even if you enjoy things like the Object 268 version 5 that came out with the season pass, like, I don't know, like 6 months ago now, yeah, it plays very much like that sort of accuracy. It's not terrible accuracy, which means that you can actually hit shots. And on console, considering the PC version is very, very good within the game, the console version has better accuracy, which means that you can hit more reliably, and you do hit quite consistently with this thing, especially if you fully aim. A lot of the time that you miss is usually because, like, you've fired on the move or done something like silly like that. It doesn't really miss because its accuracy is actually fairly decent when you fully aim. It is just saving that time, and that's the kind of bit that's a little bit disappointing with the tank, is how long it takes to actually fully aim, which of course it has like a 3.5 second aim time, but that can get reduced if you use some of the perks, and you can always just blind fire people and set them on fire like this. So yeah, it's always really, really fun, and often, you know, you can afford to miss a couple of shots. You don't have the worst reload in the world. You've got about like a 13-second reload, as you just saw there, and of course if you're using then combat rations, you can reduce it slightly and stuff like that. So make sure that you're kind of min-maxing the tank in terms of its DPM. You want to be putting rapid loading, you want to be putting advanced loader on the tank, and you can really make the DPM actually pretty decent for a tank that is supposedly, I guess, limited by its DPM, because that's kind of the trade-off usually within mod tanks, although this tank didn't really get the memo, I don't think, because if you take into account it can do 750 alpha every single, well, every quarter of a minute, let's say. even though it's less than that, you'll be able to do 3000 damage if you roll very average within the tank. So 3000 DPM on a tier 8 is very, very decent. You know, you're looking at medium tanks that don't even have that at tier 9. So yeah, I think that this tank's DPM makes it really, really fun. And of course, you know, you don't tend to have too many awful games in this thing if you don't play it super aggressively. I'm not going to lie, if you try and play this thing like a brawler on the front line, because you don't really have armor, you're not going to be able to actually survive for that long. And so yeah, you do have to wait for the beginning of the game, at the very least. Just wait that little minute or 2 minutes. Just try and feather a shot in that first couple of minutes of the gameplay, and then you'll be able to kind of move forward with that within the game. And then, you know, you've picked up probably 1,500 damage if you've, you know, been waiting around, just kind of picking shots as and when you can, and then you can move in and develop the situation. Because yeah, this doesn't do well at all if you are kind of YOLOing in or trying to be like super aggressive with the tank. And you know, you can't necessarily mean that you can't hit on the move at all times, because you certainly can, and you don't have to fully aim in all regards, especially if you're just trying to mop up damage. But you can see here, a very, very good game overall. Managed to pick up, what, like 4,000 damage already, looking like it's going to be a pretty solid victory. 5 on 4, we'll probably take out that heavy tank up in the top left. Got a Goronich, we've got a light tank over here, and we have got another tank nearby as well. But 3,908 damage, it's a good result for a tank that, you know, has about 3,000 DPM. And I guess the key thing about the ISU 152K is that it's very consistent. You don't have to be in a tier 8 game, or you don't have to be coming up against tier 6s to be able to dish out your damage, because you have that super high alpha damage, which makes the tank really, really fun. Unfortunately, because of the very slow traverse speed, as you're seeing right here, this is where the tank is very disappointing, is because you're very slow, you don't have armor, and so if people come towards you and they just YOLO you, you typically don't do very well, because you just kind of miss. And especially if you're not even aiming at them, it doesn't go well at all. And you can see here we actually get taken out pretty quickly. And that comes into the kind of second bit that I want to talk about, is the armor model and what you have to think about in this sort of tank. Because it is not a tank that is going to be like easy to play for a brand new player. So I wouldn't recommend it if you were new to tank destroyers, if you're new to non-turreted tanks. The ISU 152K is probably not for you. So don't buy it. And I think that that's kind of the key thing. But if you do know how to play, or you're really wanting to get stuck in with a brand new tank, and one that, you know, can definitely perform, yeah, I could definitely see this tank dealing thousands of damage, like even maybe 7,000 or 8,000 damage within the game. I think that's really, really not too difficult within this sort of game. And so yeah, really, really do think that you should give it a chance. And we'll kind of skip forward to the final bit. Now that sums up that game: 4,700 damage, 210 assistance, 4,900 combined. It's a fairly decent result, and we'll just go on to the next gameplay now. Talking about the next gameplay, Highway, probably one of the better maps, at least in my personal opinion, within World of Tanks. I think that there's got a little bit of everything for everyone. Maybe not so much like tank destroyers after like the mid game. I feel like afterwards it becomes a little bit difficult once the side has kind of been won with a tank destroyer. But yeah, definitely a non-turreted one, especially. The turreted ones can go in the town or whatever. Whereas it's a little bit less flexible when you're playing something like we're playing the ISU 152K. However, what you can do is at least try not to get spotted at the beginning of the game and take a hit, hopefully. Fingers crossed. But yeah, a good position at the beginning of the game is only really when there isn't a French wheeled vehicle that's trying to have a laugh and come in and spot everyone. But definitely don't want to be a KV4 sat out in the open against one of these bad boys, because it will slap you, and slap you hard, for 750 alpha, which makes it very, very good at kind of removing the hard-hitting opponents and making sure that you're the one focusing the opponent. I think that that's where, when you're playing on your own and you're playing in a tank that has that high alpha, you can kind of almost act as like your team to be able to remove the high pressure target, someone that's going to be really dangerous to the tank that you're playing or dangerous to potentially losing the game. If you think one tank is really going to be a problem, you can focus them with such high alpha, and you don't have to, you know, YOLO in that much. You only really need to hit them a couple of times, and you can kind of move forward after that to be able to get that damaging hits on the person. You know, with 750 alpha, tier 8s are going to be a 2-shot for you, nearly all of them, and tier 9s, they're probably like a 3-shot, and tier 10s, yeah, will probably take a little bit more, but probably a 3-shot if they're mediums or low, like light tanks, and some tank destroyers as well. But yeah, that's where I think the key thing comes with the ISU 152K, and maybe that's why you'd want to purchase a tank like this, is when you're having those days where you just can't be arsed, to be honest with you, and you just want to just go in, you want to have a bit of fun, and you just want to get some damage, and damage really, really quickly as well. And that's what you can see with this tank. We've landed 3 hits, and we've done 2,349 damage. It's literally 3 shots. And how hard has it been? Well, not hard at all. Now, that kind of leads me into my next kind of question to you that I want to see you guys answer in the comment section, and that's, do you think these high alpha damage guns with fairly okay DPM, you know, like 3,000 damage at DPM at tier 8 is really, really good? Do you think that's like too much within the game, or do you think it's like just pretty average? Or how would you like to see Wargaming kind of tackle these high alpha damage guns? Do you think that, like, they say that these things are broken, like the FE2 or FE4005, but at tier 8 they don't really seem to bother about kind of trying to balance the alpha damage to the hit points of the majority of tanks at the same tier. And I think that that's kind of something that's definitely a negative for some of the low tier players that you're coming up against. Like coming up against a tier 6 with an ISU 152K, you're literally removing them from the game. There's a very limited amount of tier 6s with hit points to actually take one whole hit from this tank, which, yeah, I mean, the fact that tier 10, they said that it wasn't balanced because, you know, the FE4005 I'm talking about, and the 183 caliber guns, and they said that that wasn't balanced because you can essentially remove someone's hit points from 1 to, well, full to 0. And yet they have tanks like this in the game which can do the exact same thing but at lower tiers, and I think that, you know, I don't quite know what Wargaming are really going for. I kind of get it if you give the gun like terrible statistics, or you give the gun like bad penetration, or like something to just kind of nullify the fact that, yeah, you may have this alpha damage, but 9 times out of 10 it's not really going to work too effectively. But with the ISU 152K, it's like just a troll cannon. It literally just removes the hit points off of anything that you actually line up with the gun with. So yeah, I just think that these sort of tanks just aren't really balanced within the game, at least from a kind of, if someone chooses you to be the one that they're going to fight in the game. And so yeah, I'm not particularly a fan of the fact that these kind of break the game a little bit, but I'm not saying that they should be completely removed. I'm just opening up the question. It's an interesting kind of line of topic to kind of discuss with you guys as to what you guys are thinking about these sorts of tanks. Obviously what we're doing here, not probably the maximum strategy that you want to use with an ISU 152K, where you're kind of out in the open because you don't have armor and you're probably going to get taken out pretty quick. But we don't really need to think too much about it. Unfortunately, the TVP VTU decides that he's just going to like have an absolute meltdown and try and YOLO in. Don't quite know what he was thinking, but we'll take it. And then the tank destroyer in the far back right of the map decides he's going to come over, and then yeah, we get hit again by the Yahtzee there, which is disappointing. We do pick up 5,800 combined damage, which is really, really good for this tank, and probably a very nice mastery badge. However, we do lose, which is a little bit of a sour taste in the mouth, but there we go. Hopefully you did enjoy watching this, and I guess we'll skip forward to the victory page right here, And yeah, let's see how much XP we managed to pick up. Obviously, we came second, because why not when you do more damage than someone else, and probably got more assistance as well, but a very, very good hit. You could see that we managed to pick up 7 direct hits and did 5,000 damage, so that just shows you how good this gun can be when you get it singing, and the fact that you just don't really bounce ever with the tank really helps it out as well. Obviously, if you've picked up this tank, let me know in the comment section down below what you thought of the new tank, as far as my opinion as to whether you should buy it, whether you should not. If you're interested in tank destroyers, if you're interested in non-turreted tank destroyers, or you want to get into a tank that is going to be fairly easy to use in terms of like you're not going to bounce, or you don't necessarily need to know as many weak points, then this tank is fantastic. If you're interested in a tank that's going to be flexible and be able to be very mobile, then this definitely isn't the one for you. So weigh it up, put it up. Is it good? Yes. Is it going to be really, really overpowered? No. Weigh it up. Is it worth the cost of about £30 within Britain, and obviously like $40 for you Americans? Hopefully that kind of gave a good summary of it. Hopefully it showcased what the tank is good at, what the tank is bad at. And yeah, hopefully you'll join me back for another video coming tomorrow, where we look at the buffed versions of the T110E4 line. Thank you very much, and I'll see you there. Goodbye.